Hey everyone, welcome back to JR Pro Shop Vids. Barks is back in the house, and we got some brand new balls from the brands of Brunswick. So in front of me here we have the Hammerhead, and from Radical we have the Torpedo and the Torpedo Direct Hit. Now if you're looking for reviews for the special effect, the Dark Side, and the GB5 Pearl, stay tuned for those. They're coming out in just a couple of weeks. So this is my first time on camera since we started with the tier list concept, so I wanted to place a few balls that are some of my personal favorites and see where they would rank on the tier list. So just to quickly run through it, at the very top we have the S tier, which is the staples in my bag, balls that I go to every tournament, every league night with, that are constantly being thrown, some of my favorite balls of all time. And next up we have the A tier, which is something that would probably be in my tournament bag more often than not, but may come in and out depending on which center I'm bowling in. Next up we have the B tier, which are balls that I would throw a lot in league. Next up we have C tier, which I think are condition-specific balls. They're going to be really good in certain situations, but they're not going to come up very often. And then at the bottom we have the D tier, which are balls that I'm probably never going to throw. So I want to start by placing a couple balls on the tier list that I've been throwing a lot lately, and one of which I actually threw in this video coming up. The first ball that's going to be starting at the very top in the S tier is the Hammer Effect Tour. Now, I don't go to a league night or any tournament without this ball. It never leaves my bag. And more often than not, I find myself throwing it when I'm not 100% sure what the pattern is going to give me. It gives me a good baseline and lets me know what my next move is going to be. And the other ball I'm going to talk about is the Track Stealth mode. Now, for me, it's still a fairly new ball. I'm not 100% sure where and when it's going to be useful, but I do like the shape that I see out of it, and it gives me a more predictable motion that gives me a little more overall hook than an Effect Tour. For that reason, I'm going to place it in the B tier. It could go up or down depending on how often I use it and where I see it being most usable. All right, so now let's get into the bowling. So the pattern today is the Thursday night house shot, which has a little bit more volume than most patterns being used at Zone Coquitlam here. Especially on the left side, it doesn't break down very fast, and a lot of times there's some hang spots down lane, so you need a fair amount of surface to get the ball to shape properly and hit the pocket on a consistent basis. So the first ball out today is going to be the Hammerhead, which is a bit of a mouthful. So because this is a brand new ball, it hasn't been thrown yet, and it's got a lot of surface on it, I want to start a fair bit further right than I'm normally going to play on a shot like this. So that first shot you see gets out to the break point and it kind of labors, it doesn't quite make it up the hill. So that's an indication to me that I'm too far right and my angles are too steep. So the adjustment here is to move my feet to left and try and play a little bit more direct up the lane. And you can see the ball shape is a little bit more ideal and the pin carry is a whole lot better. So as shots are going down the lane here, let's talk a bit more about what this ball really is. So the Hammerhead here has the spheroid core, which has been used in a lot of hammer balls in the past. One of my personal favorites was the Hammer Rodman. So essentially the same concept with a slightly different cover stock. This one here has aggression solid, which the last time we saw this on a symmetric ball was the Dark Web. So even though they have the same cover stock name, the build of them is a little bit different. The additives are the same between the Hammerhead and the Dark Web, but the cover stock base is a little bit different. This has a bit of an older cover stock base on it, grabs the lane a little bit earlier and smooths out the breakpoint shape. Versus the Dark Web, I found to be a little bit cleaner and more responsive off of friction. So the ball I chose to compare it against was the Track Stealth mode. From the few times I've thrown in a league so far, it tends to be a little bit cleaner through the front part of the lane and a little bit more responsive to friction. You can certainly see that here when you look at them side by side. The Hammerhead definitely hooks a bit earlier, more in the mid lane, and smooths out the motion on the back end. And I find the Stealth mode to be a little bit more receptive to changes in hand position. You can roll it more and have it roll more end over end. And if you want to get around it, it changes direction a little bit more. I felt like with the Hammerhead, even when I tried to change hand positions a little bit, it wanted to kind of do the same thing, which personally I like, but that sometimes makes it a little bit niche and maybe only serves a very limited purpose sometimes. So with that being said, especially with a new ball, I think it's good at what it does, but I don't know how many games I'd be able to use it in a league session, so I'm going to put it in the B tier. I'm going to play around with it a little bit in league. I think I'd be able to put up some pretty good scores with it. It's just a question of how long do you stay in it on the fresh. Moving on to the next ball, which is the Radical Torpedo. We have two in front of us here. Now, even though they're similar in name, they're very different in design, and we'll talk about the differences as this video goes on. So we're going to start here with the Radical Torpedo. Now, this is an asymmetric pearl with HK22C plus pearl cover stock. Now that cohesion tends to make the ball hook a little bit more in oil and doesn't make it quite as responsive off of friction. And throwing this ball, it felt like it got a little bit lopey at times. Didn't know if it wanted to really change direction or not. I felt like if it got into the oil, it didn't really jump on me. Sometimes it'd be a little bit too clean, but I also felt like if I got it to the friction, it didn't jump too much. So I think if I played with surfaces a little bit, this comes shiny out of box, which I don't love shiny balls in particular. I think even cracking it with the 3000 pad, just to take some of that polish off, might even out the reaction a little bit for me and make it more usable in a league night, because as a lefty, there isn't a lot of breakdown throughout a league night, and typically you don't find a lot of times to use a shiny pearl, or any shiny ball for that matter. I do have a hard time finding pearl balls that I like. This one could be a contender. Right now, the pearl ball of choice is the NV Tour Pearl, just because the shape is a little bit more mellow and there's a little bit less overall hook, which I like. But I'm gonna play around with this one and see maybe it can find a spot in my bag. Now, comparing this one to a Track Theorem Pearl, I felt very comfortable with that ball. I really like the way it revs up, how it changes direction quickly. I find that it revs up quickly, but it doesn't jump off the friction as much as some other pearls. And maybe it's just a visual thing for me, but I really like the bright yellow engraving against the dark blue ball and how it revs up, and it's really easy to see the phases of ball motion that way. I think in the 5 or 6 shots that you see here, there was no edits. Those were all 10 in the pit, and I was very confident. This might actually end up back in my bag. So if I'm gonna place this in a tier list, it's probably gonna go in the C tier today. I think it's very condition specific. I do think it needs quite a bit of oil, especially in the front part of the lane, to look good. I don't think this is gonna be the best look when there's a lot of friction. I think there's balls that get through the front part of the lane easier and don't rev up so quick and don't change direction as much. So I don't think this would be ideal for dry. I think it could be really good on oil. I'm gonna have to play around with it and see where it fits best, but for now it's gonna be in the C tier. And moving on to a very unique concept, which is the Torpedo Direct Hit. So last year, Hammer came out with the Hammer Axe, which had a low friction reactive cover on essentially the nugget core from a T-zone. It was only really meant to be a more durable spare ball. It wasn't really meant to be a ball that hooked. So Radical wanted to build upon that and put an asymmetric core, which they've done in this one with that same low friction reactive cover. So these first few shots, I threw the axe right on top of the friction just to show how sensitive it can be and how little hook a ball like that can create. As you can see, if I got it in the oil, it just wanted to skid 60 feet, and if I got it to the dry, it didn't quite come off hard enough, and I didn't really have any confidence with it. So standing in the same spot with the Torpedo Direct Hit, those first couple of shots jumped off the friction a lot more and really went through the face and really forced me to move my feet to the right. Like I said previously, there is quite a bit of oil out here. I think it's 27 mils on this house shot. And moving right into more oil isn't ideal for a ball with a low friction reactive cover. As you can see, the balls that got a little bit up the lane, I missed a little bit right. They didn't want to hook at all. The balls that I got a little bit to left to the friction wanted to jump a little bit still. I think this ball is going to be really, really good on wood or any really old panels that have a lot of friction built into them. These are older panels, but there is quite a bit of oil out there, so it's probably not the best idea to use a ball like this on this condition, especially when you look at a ball like a Hammerhead, which really looked good on the oil. And I think for that reason, this can only go in C tier. This is only going to be really good on really old panels with a lot of friction built in, or wood lanes with a ton of friction built in. I think this would be a usable ball if you want to play straighter, and most reactive balls are just hooking way too much. So just to recap where these balls are going to fit in a tier list, this Hammerhead here, I'm going to put in the B. It has the potential to go to A, but I need to use it a bit more to figure that out first. And both torpedoes here, I think, are just condition specific, especially for somebody like me. So for that reason, I think they can only go in the C tier. Playing around with surface on the torpedo here might bump it up to B. Time will tell on that one. With the Direct Hit, I think it can only fit in C just because it's such a niche ball. So we're towards the end of the video here, so it is question time with Barks. Looking at the Torpedo Direct Hit here, it's a very niche ball. It's definitely one of the least hooking balls I've ever thrown that's not plastic. So I want to know, what's the least hooking ball that you own that's not a plastic ball? Let me know down in the comments below. So thank you for watching, everybody. If you're in the market for anything new bowling related, whether it be a ball, bag, shoe, accessory, head to shop.bufabowling.com. Use our promo code JungoBarks and save 10% off your entire order. And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.